The deep dive is back, and today we're tackling one of the most difficult questions in spiritual life,
Oh,
the
definitely.
painful paradox of divine discipline. I mean, if God is love, why does he sometimes use affliction or hardship or even just withdrawal to achieve his purposes?
Right.
We're diving deep into a specific ancient text, Hosea 5.15, and some really profound commentary around it.
And our mission today really is to try to understand why affliction is sometimes, well, necessary.
Mm.
We're looking at distress not just as punishment, but as a deliberate, calculated, and this is key, ultimately merciful
A
invitation.
covenant invitation, right?
Exactly. The material really asserts that God's justice is almost immediately followed by his mercy, which shows that the whole point of the pain isn't destruction, it's restoration.
It's the ultimate turnaround story, but it starts in a really tough place.
Mhm.
And to understand the cure, you have to grasp the severity of the illness first.
Mhm.
So let's jump right in, section 1.
Mm.
The lion and the discipline. The prophet Hosea is speaking to Israel and Judah during a time of just intense spiritual drift.
Indeed. And we need to be really clear about the context here. Why was judgment necessary in the first place?
Yeah.
It wasn't because the people were confused about who God was. It was active, willful rebellion.
So not a misunderstanding.
No, not at all. The sources are really emphatic about this.
Yeah.
The core problem was indifference, never confusion, but rebellion. They had taken God's foundational covenant. That he'd be their God, they'd be his people,
And what's just ignored it?
and treated it like an expired subscription.
And what did that rebellion actually look like practically?
Well, for one, blatant idolatry. I mean, they were setting up shrines to Baal and other local deities right next to where they were supposedly worshiping the Lord.
Okay.
But maybe even more damning was their political betrayal. When powerful neighbors like Assyria and Egypt started rising up,
Instead of turning to God,
instead of turning inward to the Lord who promised to protect them, they ran outward. They made these shaky, expensive, and in the end, totally futile alliances with pagan nations.
so their political moves were actually a theological failure.
Precisely. They were putting their trust in human armies and foreign kings, not the living God. Making an alliance with Assyria was basically them saying, our covenant God isn't enough for our security needs. We trust this other army more.
And that's what brings on the judgment. The judgment that's described with, terrifying ferocity right before our key verse.
Right, in Hosea 5.14.
That's where we meet the lion. God compares himself to a lion, a fierce and mighty creature who tears his people to pieces.
Yeah.
When you hear that, it just sounds like absolute destruction. How do you square that with covenant love?
That is the critical nuance, isn't it? If we hear
Mhm.
lion, we often think of, a predator guarding its territory. But here, the lion is directing its ferocity inward.
Okay.
This is a discipline reserved for covenant children who had wandered far from him.
So the tearing isn't meant to annihilate them, but to dismantle the things they're clinging to instead of him.
Exactly. God is acting as the judge, tearing away the false structures, the false alliances, the false security they had built up. It's an internal discipline, really, designed to stop their spiritual freefall before they completely destroy themselves.
So it's a painful intervention.
A painful but necessary one. It reminds them that true safety is only with him. The lion is tearing apart the refuge, not necessarily the person.
That's a huge distinction. Tearing the refuge, not the person.
Yeah.
And once that tearing is done, this really unexpected thing happens in verse 15. I will return again to my place.
Yes.
The lion doesn't stick around. He retreats.
And this is the pivot. This is section 2, the retreat and the invitation. And that withdrawal is probably the most misunderstood part of this whole process.
Because it feels like abandonment.
Of course. You're
Yeah.
hurting, you're shattered, and then God seems to just disappear. The human conclusion is, he's left me.
But the sources argue it's not abandonment. So what's the purpose? Why the silence after such a severe action?
It is a calculated covenant strategy. God acts like that lion returning to his lair, and that creates a sudden vacuum.
A vacuum.
Think about it. If God rushed in immediately with comfort, the people would probably just chalk it up to a change in circumstance or find a new idol to thank for the relief. The withdrawal prevents that.
So it's a test of true dependency.
It is. The withdrawal allows his people to, and I'm quoting here, feel the weight of their brokenness and the emptiness of all the false refuges they had pursued. The source calls it the silence that drives the heart to remember.
So when you're in pain and everything you relied on is gone, the money, the alliances, your own strength, and God is silent.
You are forced to confront the absolute reality of your need.
That does make me ask a difficult question, though. If the goal is genuine repentance, is forcing someone into that corner, by removing all comfort, is that really fellowship, or is it a kind of divine coercion?
That's a fair question. I think the difference is in the foundation of the relationship. Coercion forces an outcome on an unwilling party. But covenant discipline, it seeks restoration based on shared promises. God isn't destroying their free will. He's removing the distractions that have corrupted it.
He's clearing the field.
He is. He knows their heart still belongs to the covenant. It's just captive to idols. The withdrawal forces them to use the freedom they'd forgotten they had, the freedom to turn back. The pain is what makes that turning back genuine, not compulsory.
So the pain is the essential precursor.
Yeah.
Which brings us to section 3, the desperate response. God actually predicts when they will seek him.
And the catalyst is distress. It's when the winds blow hard against their confidence.
Right.
It happens when every idol collapses and every alliance fails, and crucially, when their own human strength proves just, utterly useless. They'll seek him when there's nothing else left.
And they are predicted to seek him earnestly. Let's unpack that word. What does the Hebrew convey that's maybe lost in translation?
It conveys so much more. The word for earnestly comes from the Hebrew shachar, which literally means to seek early or at the break of dawn.
So it's not casual.
It is the opposite of casual. It implies eagerness, desperation, intensity. It's a picture of a people running, not walking, crying out, not whispering.
So it's like someone running out of a burning house, just screaming for help because their whole world has collapsed. A complete change in posture.
It is. And think about where they go. The lion retreats to its lair after the discipline. So where do these shattered people go?
To the lion's lair.
They go to the very place where they were wounded, not to fight him, but to plead for safety. The lion who tore them becomes the lion who shelters them. It's a complete reversal.
Wow, that reversal is powerful. And it connects directly to the historical and modern failures of these false refuges. Israel kept looking away from the lion.
That was their fatal flaw. Historically, when the northern kingdom of Israel felt weak, who did they look to? Assyria.
And Judah.
When the southern kingdom of Judah felt threatened, they looked to Egypt. They were trading a covenant relationship with God for a political treaty with a corrupt human power.
And we do that every day. Our modern Assyrias and Egypts. They're not armies. They're our bank accounts, our plans, our reputation.
Exactly. A false refuge today is anything we secretly rely on more than God. Maybe it's the security you feel from a perfect retirement plan, or the identity you've built on your job title.
And when a crisis hits.
A financial crash, a health scare, loss of reputation. If your foundation is in those things, they just collapse instantly.
Let's make that really practical. Say someone's entire self-worth is tied up in their social image, their professional title. Then a layoff hits.
That is the lion's tearing in action. The discipline removes the false comfort. Now, if that person immediately rushes to another job or starts spinning a new social narrative to cover the gap,
That's just finding a new Assyria.
that's looking for a new Assyria. True, earnest seeking, the shachar happens when they stop running, stand in the brokenness, and realize the security they crave can't come from a resume. The sources say it so plainly. None of these can heal. None can secure, none can save.
It's only when those false refuges are exposed as empty that we finally learn what it means to run desperately to the only real source of hope.
And that takes us right into our last section, section 4, distress as a strange and holy blessing, because the sources are explicit about this. Our God has not changed.
The same principles apply to us.
Directly.
But it still feels uncomfortable to think of suffering as a divine tool.
Mm-hmm.
If that principle holds, what is God's motivation for, as the sources put it, stirring our circumstances?
The motivation isn't cruelty. It's defined as covenant love. Imagine a parent watching their child run towards a busy highway again and again, ignoring every warning. At some point, the parent has to use forced discipline to yank the child back to safety. God allows difficulty. He removes a false comfort. He interrupts our plans or exposes a weakness all to stop our self-destruction and bring us to that place of earnest seeking.
The sources call it the divine medicine. It sounds like a bitter tonic.
It is. But it's the only medicine strong enough to cure our wandering hearts. We forget God so easily when things are comfortable. Distress, as strange as it sounds, becomes the doorway to devotion because it makes the Lord necessary again.
We go from just casual observance to desperate, intentional seeking.
Yes.
So if that distress successfully drives us back, what should that seeking look like for us today? We don't have a temple in Jerusalem to run to.
The sources are clear that we seek the Lord who is already near. He is Emmanuel, God with us. There's no need to climb a mountain or cross an ocean.
So how do we engage with that nearness?
Through two key ways: His Word, where His voice speaks with clarity, and through prayer, where our souls rise with that desperation of Shachar to meet Him.
And the attitude is everything.
The attitude has to be one of intense humility. We're coming because there is no other hope. It's not a request for a minor improvement. It's a plea for total restoration.
Determined faith.
Yeah.
Refusing to let go until the relationship is renewed. The lion tore them, but they run back to the lion for shelter.
Exactly. Because they finally recognize that the pain of the tearing was the very mercy that saved them from wandering off a cliff.
This deep dive,
Yeah.
it really gets a whole new perspective. That painful paradox seems to resolve in its purpose. Suffering, when it drives us back to God, really is a strange and holy blessing.
Affliction is the teacher. Trouble is the trumpet calling us back.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the final thought from this text. The language of seeking Him early, or earnestly, invites us to consider a challenge.
Which is,
To proactively turn our hearts before the distress gets to its peak. We're invited to imagine waking the lion at dawn, shaking heaven with our cries.
but we wait. We wait until the whole structure has been torn down before we finally seek the architect.
The ultimate challenge here is to seek His presence, His fellowship, His guidance, more than we seek temporary relief from the pain itself. The goal is letting our distress lead us not to despair, but to the God who is waiting to heal and restore.
And the final thought to leave us with.
Consider this. How would your life change if you sought the lion today with the same intensity you would only use when everything else has already collapsed?
A truly challenging thought. Thank you for guiding us through this material.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll be back soon with more insights gleaned directly from the sources.